Rain poured down in thick sheets, drenching her thin jacket as she stood on the sidewalk, hugging herself for warmth. The city lights blurred through the downpour, and each passing car sent a cold spray of water onto the pavement. She had nowhere to go. No home. No family. Just a single backpack slung over her shoulder, carrying everything she owned. She tightened her grip around the straps, her breath fogging in the chilly air. Hours had passed since she was forced out, and the weight of exhaustion pressed heavy on her shoulders. She had never imagined her life would come to this alone, desperate, wandering the streets with no destination. Every shelter she had tried was full. Every door she knocked on was shut. And now she was running out of options. Just as she was about to give up and find a dry corner to curl up in for the night, a sleek black car rolled to a slow stop beside her. The tinted window lowered, revealing a man in the driver's seat. His sharp eyes studied her for a moment before he spoke, his voice steady yet curious. "You look like you could use some help." She hesitated. Strangers didn't just stop to offer kindness, at least not in her experience. But the storm was getting worse, and her body was already trembling from the cold. She had nothing left to lose. "Where are you headed?" he asked, as if she had a destination. She swallowed hard. Nowhere. For a moment, there was silence. Then, without another word, he reached over and pushed open the passenger door. Something inside her screamed to be cautious, to turn away, to keep walking. But another part of her, the part that was exhausted, hopeless, and desperate for warmth, made her step forward. Her fingers gripped the door handle, and she took one last look at the dark, empty street behind her. Then she got in. The warmth of the car wrapped around her instantly, the scent of leather, and something faintly expensive filling her senses. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know why he had stopped. But as the car pulled back onto the road, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. She kept her hands clasped in her lap, trying to stop them from shaking. Whether it was from the cold or the nerves, she wasn't sure. The car's heater was already working to chase away the chill in her bones, but the unease in her chest wouldn't fade so easily. The man beside her hadn't spoken again. He kept his attention on the road, his expression unreadable. The soft glow from the dashboard illuminated his sharp features, strong jaw, focused eyes, the kind of face that held power without needing to say much. She knew better than to trust easily. Life had already taught her that much. She glanced toward the window, watching the city blur past. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. Then, without looking at her, he said, "Somewhere warm." Safe. Safe. That word had lost its meaning to her a long time ago. But she didn't argue. Not yet. The car moved smoothly through the empty streets, the rain still falling in a steady rhythm. She tried to piece together what little she knew about him, his expensive car, the confidence in the way he carried himself, the way he had stopped for her without hesitation. He didn't seem like the type to pick up strangers off the street. And yet, here she was. She shifted slightly, suddenly aware of how small she felt in that car. Her clothes were damp, clinging to her skin uncomfortably. She could still feel the night air on her, reminding her of how long she had been outside. "You don't have to do this," she murmured. His grip on the wheel tightened just slightly. "I know." That was it. No explanation. No reassurance. Just a simple acknowledgement. She should have been afraid. She should have questioned him more. But exhaustion was settling deep into her bones, and the warmth of the car was making it harder to keep her guard up. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by quieter streets, wealthier neighborhoods. The buildings were taller here, cleaner. Nothing like the places she usually found herself. When the car finally stopped, she looked up at the towering glass structure outside. It wasn't a hotel. It wasn't the kind of place that had a neon vacancy sign flashing in the window. "This is your place." she asked, surprised. He gave a small nod. Then, for the first time since she got in the car, he turned to look at her fully. There was something unreadable in his gaze, something careful. "You don't have to stay," he said. "But if you do, at least you'll be out of the rain." She hesitated, fingers tightening around the straps of her backpack. She should say no. She should walk away. But for some reason, she didn't. With a slow breath, she reached for the door handle and stepped out of the car. And as she followed him inside, she had no idea that this one choice would change everything. The elevator ride was silent, except for the soft hum of machinery. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, gripping the straps of her backpack like it was the only solid thing in her life. The man beside her stood still, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. She stole a glance at him, searching for any clue about what kind of person he was. But he was impossible to figure out. The way he carried himself, the way he barely reacted to anything, it was like he had seen too much of the world, and nothing surprised him anymore. When the doors slid open, he stepped out first, leading her down a long, dimly lit hallway. The place was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't belong in a city. She followed him, her footsteps light against the polished floor, until he stopped in front of a door. With a simple swipe of a keycard, he pushed it open. She hesitated at the threshold, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't a place for someone like her. The space inside was massive, too clean, too expensive, too unreal. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the far wall, revealing the city skyline glowing in the rain. The furniture was sleek, the kind she had only seen in magazines. "You can take the guest room," he said, breaking the silence. He gestured toward a hallway on the left. "There's a bathroom inside. Fresh clothes, towels." She stepped inside slowly, her shoes damp against the hardwood floor. It felt wrong, standing there like she belonged. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice quiet. He met her gaze, his expression still unreadable. "Does it matter?" She swallowed hard. Maybe it shouldn't. Maybe she should just take what was being offered. A warm place. A bed. A night without fear. But nothing in life came without a price, and she didn't know what his was yet. Still, exhaustion was winning. Her body ached, her head felt too heavy. And the thought of curling up somewhere safe, even for just one night, was impossible to resist. Without another word, she turned and made her way to the guest room. The door closed softly behind her, shutting her off from the questions she wasn't ready to face. She dropped her backpack onto the floor, her fingers fumbling with the zipper. Inside, everything she owned fit into one small space. A few changes of clothes, a tattered notebook filled with scribbled thoughts, a picture of a life that no longer existed. She ran a hand through her damp hair, breathing in the unfamiliar scent of the room. It smelled fresh, clean, like new beginnings. But she wasn't naive enough to believe in those anymore. Lying down on the bed, she let her body sink into the softness. It had been so long since she had felt something this comfortable. Sleep pulled at her, heavy and unavoidable. But even as her eyelids fluttered shut, one thought lingered in her mind. Who was he? And what did he really want? The city was still asleep when she woke up. Soft light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting shadows across the room. For a brief moment she forgot where she was. The warmth of the bed, the quiet, it all felt too foreign. Then reality crashed back in, and her heartbeat quickened. She sat up, glancing around the unfamiliar space. The night before felt like a blur, like something out of a dream. But the sleek furniture, the clean scent of fresh sheets, and the faint hum of the city outside told her this was real. She was here, and she still didn't know why. She slipped out of bed, padding quietly toward the door. The apartment was silent. For a moment, she thought maybe he had left. Maybe she had imagined the whole thing. But then, as she stepped into the open living space, she saw him. He was standing by the window, a phone in one hand, his other resting in his pocket. His posture was relaxed, but something about the way his jaw was set made her pause. His voice was low, steady, but there was an edge to it that sent a shiver up her spine. "Handle it." A pause. No mistakes. She froze. He hadn't noticed her yet, and something told her she shouldn't let him know she was listening. She took a slow step back, but the floor creaked beneath her weight. His head turned instantly. Their eyes met. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then, as if nothing had happened, he ended the call and slipped his phone into his pocket. "You're up early," he said, his tone unreadable. She forced herself to stay calm. Couldn't sleep. He studied her for a moment before nodding toward the kitchen. "You should eat." It was such a normal thing to say, yet nothing about this situation was normal. She hesitated, but hunger gnawed at her, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in nearly a day. She moved slowly, watching him carefully, as she grabbed a piece of toast from the counter. He poured himself a cup of coffee, his expression impossible to read. "So," she said, breaking the silence, "who were you talking to?" His hand stilled for a fraction of a second before he took a sip of his coffee. "Business." It wasn't an answer. Not really. She felt her stomach twist. She had been in enough bad situations to recognize the feeling creeping in now. The sense that something wasn't right, that there was more happening beneath the surface than she could see. She needed to figure out what. But she also needed to be careful, because something told her that getting too close to the truth might be more dangerous than she was ready for. She forced herself to take a bite of the toast, though it felt like sandpaper in her mouth. Across from her, he moved with the same quiet control, his expression giving nothing away. She wasn't sure what unnerved her more, what she had overheard on his call, or the fact that he seemed completely unbothered by it. The air between them felt heavier now. She knew she had to be careful with her questions, but she also knew she couldn't ignore the warning bells going off in her head. "What kind of business are you in?" she asked, keeping her tone light. He lifted his coffee to his lips, taking his time before answering. "Investments." It was vague. Too vague. She wanted to push for more, but before she could, there was a sharp knock at the door. Her body tensed instinctively. He didn't react the way she expected. No hesitation, no flicker of concern, just quiet calculation as he set down his cup and walked to the door. She watched as he glanced at the screen beside it, showing a live feed of whoever was outside. Then, without a word, he opened the door. A man stood there, dressed in a dark suit, his expression serious. "We need to talk." She knew immediately that something was wrong. The man's eyes flicked toward her, then back to him. He stepped aside, motioning for the visitor to enter. "Who's she?" the man asked, his voice low. She felt the weight of both their stares on her now. "No one you need to worry about," he said smoothly. Her stomach twisted. The man didn't seem convinced, but he let it go. "There's a problem," he said, lowering his voice. "The deal, there's been a complication." A muscle tightened in his jaw. "Fix it." The man hesitated. "It's not that simple. There's a leak." Her pulse spiked. A leak? A deal. Words that meant something, but not enough for her to fully understand. But what she did understand was the tension rolling off him now, the shift in his demeanor. Whoever he was, whatever he was involved in, this wasn't just business. It was something else. Something dangerous. She should have walked away. She should have never stepped into that car last night. But it was too late for that now. Because now, she wasn't just a stranger who needed a place to stay. Now, she was caught in something far bigger than she ever could have imagined. Her pulse pounded in her ears as the tension in the room thickened. The man in the suit stood rigid, waiting for an answer, while he remained unnervingly calm. She could see it now, how easily he controlled the space, how his presence alone seemed to dictate the flow of the conversation. But beneath that cool exterior, something was shifting. A leak. A deal gone wrong. And now, She was in the middle of it. She needed to get out. Slowly, she pushed back from the counter, trying to make her movement seem casual. She could feel their eyes on her, but neither of them stopped her. Not yet. Then he spoke. She stays. Her breath caught. The man in the suit narrowed his eyes. That's a mistake. For the first time, a flicker of something sharp crossed his face. It's not your call. She felt the shift between them, the silent power struggle playing out in ways she couldn't quite grasp. But one thing was clear: she was no longer just a bystander. The man in the suit exhaled, clearly frustrated, but he didn't push the issue. Instead, he pulled a small device from his pocket and placed it on the table. A red light blinked once, before going still. It's worse than we thought, he said. Someone inside is feeding them information. If we don't move now, we lose everything. She didn't know what everything meant in their world, but the weight of it was suffocating. Then we move, he said, voice steady. Tonight. A cold dread settled in her stomach. This wasn't just business. This was dangerous. And she was stuck right in the center of it. She had to make a choice: trust him or run. She looked at him, searching for something, anything, that would tell her what kind of man he really was. His gaze met hers, unreadable as always. But there was something there, something she hadn't seen before. Then he spoke, his voice low, meant only for her. You don't have to be afraid. But she was. Because deep down, she knew whatever was coming next would change everything. And then, before she could decide what to do, the lights flickered. A second later, the building plunged into darkness. And the real danger began. The darkness swallowed the room in an instant. A heavy silence followed, thick with tension. She held her breath, heart hammering as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Then a noise, subtle, but there. A shift in the air, a movement just beyond her line of sight. She barely had time to react before a hand grabbed her wrist. Panic shot through her, but then she heard his voice, low and firm. Stay close. She let herself be pulled forward, her feet moving without thought. The sound of a door opening, then the rush of cooler air as they stepped into the hallway. The emergency lights flickered faintly, casting everything in an eerie glow. The man in the suit was gone. Or maybe he had never been meant to stay. She looked up at him, trying to read his expression in the dim light. What's happening? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he led her through the hallway, his pace quick but controlled. The power outage wasn't random. Someone's making a move. A chill ran down her spine. Who? His jaw tightened. The people looking for me. Her mind spun. She had spent years learning how to disappear, how to stay out of trouble, how to read danger before it reached her. And yet somehow she had walked straight into something she didn't understand. They reached another door, and he pulled out a keycard. A soft beep, then the lock clicked open. He ushered her inside, closing it behind them. The room was smaller, more contained. A study, maybe. A large desk sat near the window, a set of monitors lining the wall, dark now, useless without power. She turned to him. Why am I still here? For the first time, something flickered across his face. Something almost like hesitation. But it was gone just as quickly. Because now they know you exist. The weight of his words hit her like a punch. She had been a ghost for so long, slipping through life unnoticed, avoiding attachments, avoiding risk. And now, because of one night, because of one choice, she had stepped into something she couldn't walk away from. A distant noise, metal against metal, the sound of forced entry. His hand went to the inside of his jacket. She exhaled shakily. I shouldn't be here. You don't have a choice anymore. The door handle shifted. Everything happened in a blur. A crash. A shout. Movement so fast she could barely track it. Then silence. When she looked up, the man who had entered lay slumped against the wall, unmoving. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. He stepped in front of her, his presence solid, unmoving. "We need to leave. Now." She should have run. She should have turned and disappeared into the night, the way she always had before. But she didn't. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't just running from something. She was running towards something. And that terrified her more than anything else. By the time they reached the garage, the city outside was still cloaked in shadows, the storm clouds heavy in the sky. He pulled open the door to a sleek black car, nodding for her to get in. She hesitated, just for a moment, then slid inside. The car roared to life, the engine humming beneath them as he pulled onto the empty street. The rain had started again, light at first, then harder, washing over the windshield like a warning. She turned to him. "Where are we going?" His hands tightened on the wheel. "Somewhere they can't follow." She wanted to ask more. Who they were. Why they wanted him. Why they knew about her now. But exhaustion was pressing in, the weight of everything settling in her bones. She leaned back against the seat, staring out at the city lights flickering past. For years, she had been looking for a way out. A way forward. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was just another mistake. Either way, there was no turning back now.